You know who really sucks though is Dallah. Oh, hey, Dallah.
What? Yeah.
I didn't know you were. I didn't know you were
I
back.
completely agree. That guy, he's such an ass.
Dallah, what a butt.
Yeah.
What a stinky butt.
Why?
Who agrees?
I mean, I agree.
Spam F in the comments.
Right there. I
Have
deserve
to
it.
show respect for him being a butt.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the JRPG Pursuit, a podcast all about JRPGs and topics we love to discuss about them. I'm Emily.
I'm Branden.
I'm Abdallah.
And today we have quite the episode for you guys. We're going to be getting into the nitty gritty of emulation when it comes to modding and hardware and software emulation, all that good stuff. Oof. So I hope you guys are excited.
Yeah,
show.
It's a long time coming. We've been teasing it. We've been referencing emulation for dozens of episodes now. And well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but like a long time. We've been talking about doing this episode, and it's happening right now. You are listening. You're witnessing history being made.
Yes, I've been excited. I've been wanting to do this episode for a while, so I'm ready. I'm ready to dig in.
I would say, Dallah, you are by far the most hardcore of the emulators among us.
He's the most prepped among us.
Yes, you have the most expertise in this area.
I will be
leaning on you hard.
Yeah.
When you're not strong, I'm here for you to lean on.
Yes, please. But before we get into today's topic, I wanted to just give a shout out to all of our members who help us out here on this podcast. So you guys are great. And if you're interested in joining, we do have 2 different tiers with lots of cool bonus stuff for you guys to enjoy, including our Discord, which you should totally check out.
And we have some fun events coming up. In terms of Xenoblade Chronicles X, we'll be doing some playthroughs of some multiplayer on that one. So if you guys are into that kind of stuff and want to play some other games, we have a docket full of stuff. Feel free to join, and we'll have some fun.
And the Xenoblade event, correct me if I'm wrong, that's this coming weekend, right?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
So if you're listening to this when this episode comes out, which would be March 25th. 26th, I think.
6.
March 26th, when this comes out, that this Saturday is the day of the Xenoblade event. So if you're not already a member, sign up. There's still time. And let's have some fun. Why don't we?
Yeah. So for today's topic, though, I think we first wanted to get into our history with emulation and I guess just our experience. So who'd like to go on this first?
I can start. I usually make Dallah start, and I'll take one for the team this time.
I will shut up for the first time.
Dallah. No. So I discovered emulation as a teenager. I think a lot of us probably did, and it was revelatory for me because I didn't know any of the complicated legal stuff around it or the ethical issues or anything. It was just like, oh my gosh, there are so many games, in particular games that didn't come out over here in America, that I was able to play. So I was able to play the Secret of Mana sequel a bit, and play Bahamut's Lagoon and some of these other games that I remember seeing in magazines and like being super excited to get to play, assuming they would come out over here, little naive Branden, and then they never showed up. And so that was my only way of experiencing them. So I didn't do a ton of it, but it was a lot of fun as a kid to be able to finally experience those games that I was excited about. Now, I don't think I ever played a game to completion on an emulator until much later in life, but I would at least kind of dabble in them and get a feeling for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I found with emulation, it's so easy to just kind of pick and choose. And then you have so many different options. It's a little bit difficult, I think, to see one through. And there's a bit of a choice paralysis, too. And you just can't make up your mind. Oh, there's this one over here. There's this one over here. Get a little bit of ADHD, if you will.
Yeah.
The game's available.
Yeah.
That's like the Netflix conundrum, right? Where you want to sit down and watch something, but you put on your streaming service and there's a billion options available to you.
I can see that. Though with Netflix, I think a lot of people like to binge shows, which would be like completing a game, right? So for me, it's a little bit the opposite. I don't know.
Well, yeah, like once I start a show, it's easy to want to sit down and just power through it, but it's the actual selection process that's the hard thing.
Choice paralysis is definitely a thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've spent like upwards of an hour searching through Netflix trying to find something to watch and end up just not watching anything at that point.
Going through your Plex server like, oh my God, there's 5 billion things here.
I know. With my server, it's always just like, all right, I know what I want. I go on there and I know exactly what I'm going to watch. If I go in there and start looking, I know that's it. I'm not going to watch actually anything.
We leech off of Dallah's Plex server, my wife and I. And we're not as familiar with what's in there, so it's easy to get lost. I think she's already pulled out all the cozy mysteries, so. But anyway, we're getting off topic. But it was interesting because like you say like choice paralysis with like having all things. I remember like when I was really young, early on in the early days of the internet and things like that, you couldn't just download a bunch of games. Like let's say to download a bunch of emulators and things like that because you only had so much time and it take forever to download even the smallest of files. True, So you'd end up just like looking up for like, because I remember like gaming on like Windows 95. Like using the old SNES and or Game Boy or things like emulators at the time. And so like, I think you had to be a little bit more, I guess, specific at the time for what you wanted to play. But at the same time, you can always.
Yeah. I think also with the internet at that time, there are a lot of like flash games and things that I would just gravitate more towards if I'm on my computer. I wouldn't bother so much with a lot of the console games. It wasn't until I was in college, I think, is when I started dabbling into GBA and Game Boy Color emulation because I was just being very nostalgic for that era.
Yeah.
And that's when I tried a few games for the first time. And I think I tried also some older console games like for Chrono Trigger. Never finished that one because I think I've talked about this before. But the Chase the Rat scene, I just got stuck because I was using a trackpad, on my laptop. Oh, so it was not ideal.
Right? No, not great.
After not getting that for the first few times, I just kind of gave up and tried something else. I played a lot of Pokemon though.
Yeah. I think that's there's a few years between us, and I think that your experience as a high schooler emulating or like playing flash games, like that was just when I was doing it, it was just before that was becoming a thing. Yes. So I was really more looking at the console games. I do remember this. I don't know what triggered this memory, but the NES emulator that I had was called Nesticle.
Oh, I remember.
Are you guys familiar with Nesticle?
Yeah.
I don't remember what they're called. That's funny.
And as a kid, like with very conservative parents, I had to hide this on my computer because the icon was a very graphic cartoon picture of testicles. And I'm like, so I just want to play video games. I
don't want like my parents to be questioning everything.
Right. I'm like, this is not an indicator of my interests, even if it was, but still.
No, exactly.
This is not what it is. It's an emulator and they're not going to understand what an emulator is. Like, how would I explain that? So, but for some reason, something triggered that memory. I had not thought about that in, 20 years. Nesticle.
That's so funny.
Also, I didn't pronounce it Ness. I said NES.
Yeah.
So like, it didn't even make sense to me as a pun. I was like, what Nesticle? Like, what? Why?
Yeah. Oh my God. I remember that emulator. But I played like a lot of like, an NES, because I had my NES, but there was only so many games I could get as a kid, and you were like limited by your funds and like whatever your parents would buy you. So like once I started figuring out the internet and I was like finding these things, I was like, wait, there's other ways I can play the games that I can't get myself, like all the games that I want to play, but don't have funds for any of those things. So I was like enamored with that whole like concept. So like, I had my own Pokemon games, but like the games that I would not be able to get, if I had red and I wanted to play blue or whatever it was at the time, like I would just emulate the blue version when I played the red one, like on my own Game Boy and stuff like that. So like there was a lot of things that like I would just do those kind of little moments of that, which is fun.
Yeah. And when they had their remakes too, like I remember playing Fire Red on there when I was in college. Because I never really played red or blue back in the day. I only played yellow. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And seeing it with a new coat of paint.
Oh, yeah. No, but there's so many like nostalgic things. Like, I mentioned this on the podcast many times, like, Terranigma, like I would never have been able to play that game. And that's one of my favorite, like, SNES games. Like I love that game so much. And like not having the ability to play, like if we didn't have emulation, there would be no way for us to actually ever play that as a kid.
Right.
So like I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for all these, like, concepts of like being able to get these kind of games that weren't allowed.
My first experience with Terranigma was I played it on my why am I blanking? Super NT. I got the ROM, put it on, sideloaded it onto the Super NT, which kind of, I think, transitions nicely into another topic, which is like the idea of hardware emulation versus software emulation. So at a very basic level, and I'm going to explain this like a dummy because I don't actually understand it. So it's, this should be easily comprehensible for most people. Dallah can correct me if I'm way off on anything here.
I'll correct you later.
But software emulation is basically creating a program that runs on a computer that tries to behave like a console would, like the chipset in a console. And so it can play these ROMs of these games or whatever. A hardware emulator is using something like an FPGA, which is a field programmable gate array, right? Gate array, is that correct? It sounds really sci-fi.
Yeah.
But basically a chip that, like a chip that is that reconfigures itself to function the way a chip in another system did. Yeah. So the analog, how close was I there?
I mean, you're more or less right. I think. Like
okay. And like I said, I wanted to make it the dummy explanation.
The layman's terms.
Yeah. I'm the chief layman in this here. So, so that's like kind of the big difference between the two. And like the analog products, Super NT, Mega SG, the Turbo one, the Game Boy, the Pocket, those are FPGA based hardware emulators. So generally speaking, those run the games from those original consoles better than a software emulator would. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, like there's going to be differences in there. The one thing that will makes like hardware emulation like more, and that kind of goes into like Analog's whole shtick was saying this is not emulation. This is just a system, where it's like, I'm like always a little bit hesitant on like saying that's probably, that's an incorrect statement because everything is emulation if it's not the real system. At the end of the day, like unless you're playing
marketing, they're just marketing it.
It's just it's a kitschy slogan. It's fun. It makes people,
it's like blast processing in the Sega Genesis. It's
exactly
basically meaningless, but
it's all about the bits at the end of the day. But like, basically like with the FPGA hardware, since it is running, through a chip, you don't get the software lag that comes with that because the lag on software is going to have to think. It's running code specifically to that. And there's always going to be that, just even if it's a small amount of lag, there's always going to be that little bit of like processing power. And it depends on what kind of computer you have, all these different things, like how powerful you have, things like how much, there's so many things that can make software emulation a little bit more laggy. More hardware emulation, in this case of the FPGA, is basically just saying, hey, let's look at this motherboard of like a SNES and copy paste everything that's on this motherboard and have it just programmed into one little chip. And so it just runs it, and it's like almost like a one-to-one. I mean, it's never always like, it depends on how the people creating these like cores, as they call them in FPGA world. But for the most part, the ones that are made well, like they just run kind of like the same way a SNES would run, because it's using this, like it's the same concept and the same hardware, but just in a chip form. And so you don't get the lag that comes from it initially. You do see lag coming from like your monitor or your TV screen and things like that, because it's not a CRT. But yes, so long-winded version of that.
No, that's good. That's the deeper dive. Appreciate that.
I think it's good to have that basis when we, dive more into a lot of the pros and cons when it comes to emulation and which one to maybe choose if you're, wanting to dabble more into this world.
Yeah. And there's like I guess I want to maybe also add a couple more things I just thought of right now is like, there's like, you have the FPGA, like let's say the Mister. So like, I have my little little Mister board here. I'm sorry. And so this one is like, it runs a bunch of different systems, and you can kind of do it, and it plugs into your HDMI, goes on your screen and everything like that. There's also like ways in terms of like systems itself. So there's something called an optical drive emulators, that, let's say, my PS2 or my Saturn has a broken laser, and I just didn't want to go through the trouble of trying to replace a laser and things like that. But people in the scene have made little like replacement pieces that uses emulation to basically emulate a drive. So instead of having to use a laser and a disk and things like that, you just plug it in straight to the motherboard and use an SD card, and you just take your games that you own, rip them onto the SD card, and you play them. So that way you're not, let's say in the case of Saturn, those games tend to rot or have a lot of problems if you constantly using them. So it's good to kind of protect your games, so you can just play them on the system without having to worry about that. So there's like that aspect of emulation as well, that there's a lot of different systems out there if you look it up, especially a lot of systems that are disk based, have their own little like emulators that you can plug into them.
So a lot of options there.
Yeah, there's a ton of options.
But when it comes down to it, though, if you had to kind of pick and choose, do you think most systems for the JRPGs like we enjoy, they often perform better, right, on the hardware type of emulation rather than software? But maybe that's a barrier to entry because of price, or you have to have, a system to begin with. So I guess when it comes to getting into the scene, would you recommend maybe software emulation is maybe the best place to try? And if you want to, then upgrade.
Yeah.
Some of the higher tiered ones.
Yeah.
I would think so. Yeah.
I think so.
If you, especially if you are just looking to see whether a game is worth your investment of time, not to mention money, right?
If you want.
Having a software emulator running on your computer, like, you can get that basically the full experience of the game. It's not going to be pixel perfect necessarily. You're going to have to deal with some of those software emulation issues potentially. But then whether that game's for you. So
yeah, I think a lot of people like to choose to emulate, because a lot of these games physically are maybe unattainable, or they're just impossible to find. And if you want to hunt down for a copy or just experience the game, that's the best option for you, really, because a lot of companies just have really failed when it comes to preserving their games on modern systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are other reasons to emulate, even beyond like, I don't have this game, I want to try it, or, we never received this game. Like, I recently was emulating a PSP game, and I have the game in question. It's on my shelf. I have a PSP that works, but I still decided to sit down and play it on an emulator for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to get footage. As a YouTube person, that's a part of my, that factors into my decisions. But even if I didn't have to get footage, I think I still would have chosen to do that, because I dislike playing games handheld. It does not feel as good to me. So being able to sit back with a big screen in front of me on my computer and play the game that way is just how I prefer to do it. So like, there's another use case for having an emulator. It's just
another use case is if you want to preserve your physical disc, because a UMD can get scratched very easily. That's why I've actually played most of my, like when I dabble in the PSP games, it's on my Vita, because it's very easy to have a emulator on the Vita.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I hope that companies like Analog, it doesn't have to be Analog, but companies like that will continue to put out devices that offer FPGA hardware emulation. I would love to be able to stick a UMD into, some new device that has a better screen or that connects to a TV. The PSP does technically connect to a TV. It's not a great experience.
No, it's not.
It's not very pretty, and you still have to use the PSP as a controller.
Yeah.
So it's not great, but you technically can. But, something a little better, something more akin to the Pocket, the Analog Pocket.
What I like about the Pocket, though, is that you can play the original software, like your cartridges in there, but you can also stick in a ROM if you want to also do software emulation, and it works pretty nicely, actually.
Yeah,
it's actually
that's one thing I really do love about the whole analog line is how easy it is to, whether you have an EverDrive, like you could do that with an EverDrive, obviously too. Just get an EverDrive if you're not familiar with EverDrive. It's they make them for basically all the major consoles, the cartridge consoles. You stick in, it's a cartridge that fits into the console. You put an SD card in there and it basically runs all of the games. You select them from a menu.
Yeah.
You can do that. Or you can just, literally just put an SD card in the analog machine and play the game straight from that. And that's fantastic. Like I said, that's how I played Terra Nigma. And I don't know if I would have played Terra Nigma if I didn't have that option to be able to play it on, what is essentially very close to actual hardware with a controller in front of my TV. Like that made a big difference for me. So
yeah. And it's heads up, Emily, that was hardware emulation, not software for the Pocket.
The ROM?
Yeah, because it's FPGA based. So the Pocket has two FPGAs.
So this is where it gets confusing, right? Because it seems like you download a game, it has to be software emulation, right? But I guess it's not technically there.
Correct. Yeah. The difference, and let me see if I can explain this. Dallah, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm maybe not the person who should, but I started talking.
I'm all for it.
The ROM is software, absolutely. But the emulator, the difference is whether the emulator itself is also software.
The actual machine.
The actual, the actual thing running that piece of software that is the game. Yeah. So in the case of analog, those are FPGA hardware emulator machines.
And all those other like handheld emulation devices, I'm guessing they're all software based rather than.
Those are software, correct?
Okay, so analog
the Retron,
is the difference.
or like even the console ones, like the Retron 5 or the Retron.
Okay.
Whatever, those different ones, those were the forerunners to like the analog, and they were cool. Like, they let you play all sorts of different games, but they were just pulling the ROM off of the cartridge and then running software emulation, right? That's the case with like the Retron, correct?
Yeah, it's software emulation. So like,
okay.
And with those, you'd run into like, it's more likely you run into glitches, little issues and things like that come up with that.
Saving issues, which I've had in the past.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is disheartening especially in the JRPG space. These games are not short.
I know.
No.
And if you lose a save file, something gets corrupted. It's more than just your time. There's an emotional investment too. And that sucks.
Yes.
And when that's happened to me, I kind of sometimes give up on a game.
You just stop, right? Yeah, you don't want to go back.
Like, I don't want this to happen again.
No. Like, what guarantee do you have it won't happen again, right?
Yeah, I've given up on many games that way. If something happened to my save file, I just cry a little bit and then I'll move on.
You move on.
But we leave a little piece of ourselves behind, A little piece of ourselves stays back there with that game.
Yeah. So I think from a hardware software perspective, I think we've kind of laid the groundwork of like what's the differences. Is there anything else you guys can think of or anything that you might want to touch upon?
I have been curious about one of the devices that's been hot right now that I think is exclusive to GameStop. That's the handheld. What are those called? Oh. The Chrome something?
Oh, the Chromatic.
The Chromatic. There you go.
That is an
hardware
FPGA.
Or software?
That is hardware.
That is okay. So that's why that's also been kind of a hot topic. And some people argue it's better than the analog. I've been curious, but I'm not going to dip into more of that because I've barely touched my analog.
Is this the thing that's from the creator of, what's his name, Palmer Luckey?
Yep.
So the thing about this, and I've heard a bit about this one, is you can definitely do a side-by-side comparison of the Pocket and the Chromatic. And there are pros and cons, I think, to both of them. Probably. Where it loses to me is it's pretty pricey, and also it only plays Game Boy games, right? It only plays Game Boy Color.
Yeah,
Game Boy and Game Boy.
It just looks pretty.
It doesn't play GBA. It doesn't have the option because like the nice thing about the Pocket is that it has two FPGAs, so it was able to like one was used for kind of the physical media stuff, and then the other one is used for actually just having cores, so you can have like
basically any core, right? Yeah,
you can have
any system with that.
All the different systems on there. So that's like that's how you can play the games off the SD card if you wanted to. So if you want to play like Turbo Graphics or you want to play any like obscure random stuff that you can't play anywhere else, that's the nice thing about it. And it's like around the same price. Like I think what the Pocket's $250 and the Chromatic is like 200. Yeah.
About the same or more if you get the limited one or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was getting a little bit of FOMO when I saw those out there, but I'm glad.
I agree that it is very pretty. Like I am more of a fan in general of the really simple aesthetic of analog. Like I just have the black, and I like the black pocket.
I wish I got one of the GBA color or the Game Boy color variants.
They just reissued those.
They have all these limited options, which I find annoying.
I know, but
they need them, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah. So I tend to prefer that aesthetic, although I can agree that the chromatic is pretty. I just think for me the trade off of the lesser utility of it would be
that makes sense.
Like a deferent to me.
Yeah. But if you were like a person who like you primarily wanted to play Game Boy Color games and didn't want to have like the clouding of like your like, you know, like too many choices of having like all these other game systems.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people out there like that.
So I think it'd be sad not to have the GBA library though, especially for JRPG players, because that's where the JRPGs
there's so many. Yeah. There's so many really good games out there.
There's a small handful of decent JRPGs on the Game Boy Color.
Sure.
But
the good ones.
You hit that Game Boy Advance is where it really takes off. So
no, 100%.
Since it's basically just a Super Nintendo, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if Analog's going to come out with an advanced version of their pocket.
Oh, like a different form factor.
Yeah, because I do find a little bit cumbersome to hold it sometimes.
That's why I don't play. Yeah, that's like
game.
And
it's
also
my whole thing playing handheld, but that's even more so with the little
screen. Yeah. The screen aspect ratio, is more catered to a GB, like the Game Boy Color, where like when you play a Game Boy Advance game, it kind of has to like kind of shrink it a little bit and bring it down, so like it doesn't use as much as the screen's real estate. No. If they made like a GBA resolutioned version of that, that would be nice. I'd definitely be inclined to buy that.
I'd be tempted. Yeah. I don't need it, but I'd be tempted.
I don't need it. We don't need anything. But that's, I think, like Analog style. I have like a love-hate relationship with Analog. I love their stuff. Like I love
their stuff. I hate how long it takes to come out. That's
like the Analog 3D, which they just
got delayed.
Last minute delayed again. So we'll see whenever it does come out. I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's not supply chain anymore, guys. What's going on?
They're just creating more FOMO, I think, or just like, I don't know.
Well, the FOMO's already passed because they've already sold out, right? There's no more. You've already missed out. If you were afraid, you can stop being afraid. You've already missed out.
Because like they're turbo graphics.
If you didn't miss out, they'll release more. Just like the Pocket. I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll do some limited edition. They'll do the colors just like they did with the Game Boy Advance, or right? They'll do the color, the different colorways. Like,
I hope so.
You can get a pretty. If you like the pretty consoles, you know me, I'm just the basic B with my I want uniformity under my TV. I don't want things to look different. Just
nothing wrong with
that. Give me I've said it before, give me a black box that sits there and plays every game. That's good. It's perfect.
That's good enough. I mean, it's at the end of the day, that's all we need.
That's all we need.
But yeah, like
that's competition for me for the limited stuff.
Yeah, you can have all those.
Limited. My problem is I don't have no patience, so I get the first iteration of everything. So by the time the limited editions do come out, I already bought it. So
regret.
I can't justify it. I've gotten good at like being like, you know what, I don't need that color because I don't care.
Sure,
it plays the games I want. Like, and plus, like, it's always weird to have like nowadays to have an off-colored thing on your shelf. So like if I were to have like all my stuff is either like white or black. No,
it only looks so sad when you said that.
That's just me. Like I do love like okay, it depends. Like if in my more like new
look how pretty
area,
this PSP is, the green.
I do like that.
That is a pretty PSP.
So pretty.
Yeah, I can't deny that.
Handhelds are a different story.
I look at my link to the.
I love handheld, like different colored handhelds. So like, yeah. But I think like on the shelf.
All these, that's why they're here.
Oh.
On the shelf. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure Analog is going to continue doing all sorts of limited colored, different colorways and stuff.
Hopefully. I've not seen them do that for a system.
Yeah, the love hate is real. That's just called playing video games on the internet in the 21st century is everything is love hate.
Yeah.
But we talked about software and hardware emulation. How much of the modding scene have you guys done or dabbled in? Where you take a console and modify it to play games like from wherever sources, which is another form of, it's not, what type of emulation would you call this?
It's not even
native hardware.
It's not emulation. It's more like it's a mod. So like it's tricking the system to think that like, or just to open up a region, because like they're naturally region locked. So like I did this like when I was a kid. Like I had a PlayStation 1 that was modded, and a PlayStation 2 that was modded as well. So basically, there's like a little chips, the old style. Like you have these little chips that would just solder to different parts of the motherboard, that would basically trick the system into thinking like to just like be able to play like US or Japanese or anywhere basically. And I've done it. I've never been very good at soldering myself. I've like dabbled more into it recently with like some mods for like the Super Nintendo. There's a guy on YouTube. I think his name is Voltar. So if you have any of the SNES Junior editions, they have like a really good output for video, but it's locked behind the fact that like you need to mod it with a specific RGB mod, and then you have really good crisp like output for it if you want to put it on like a CRT or an HD screen. So I did that myself with my Super Nintendo and didn't break it, so that worked out.
You don't have to solder though for all modding, because I modded like my PS Vita.
There's a lot of software modding you can do nowadays. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of the handhelds are software moddable, or like the PS2.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what I've dabbled in, and the 3DS and all that.
Same. Yeah. I've only modded, was it my PlayStation TV, the Vita TV?
Yeah.
And I modded that because basically the reason I did it was the Vita TV, the PlayStation TV had this whitelist where the only way a game could run on it is if it was whitelisted. They didn't blacklist the games that couldn't run. They whitelisted. They chose to go the stupid way and just create a whitelist. So like Persona 4 Golden, for example, would not run. Or no, that one would.
No, that would run. I played it on
that one would run. What was the one? East, I think it was the East Origin.
Oh, yeah.
East Origin. There is literally nothing in that game that requires any of the functionality of the Vita except for the buttons and the control stick. No reason for it to not be playable on TV. Could not do it. So I was like, this is ridiculous. Yep. So I went through the process. It's actually not like a lot of the soft modding nowadays is just really simple.
Oh, yeah.
They're simple.
You just like direct your device to a certain website and it's like, okay, and it does everything for you. I remember the Vita TV being a little more complicated, required a few steps, but it was still something I could do as like a dummy tech person. So I was able to do it, and it worked. It's great. I can put anything on there. I also modified my Wii. I have a Wii that's modded to play
same here.
Other games. Like I was able to play the Fatal Frame Wii, Fatal Frame 2 remake on the Wii because I really wanted to experience that, and that was great. So there's a lot of cool there's a lot of cool things you can do with the modding scene.
This is what I first soft modded my PS Vita Lite so that I could play the Sky games, the Trails in the Sky Evo versions. Those were never brought over here. And what they did was, I think they just took the Steam translations, right, and just superimposed it on the Evo versions in English. So
the Vita
interesting way to play it, but I recommend it.
The Vita is a great system to mod. There's so much.
Yeah, and it makes sense too because of the proprietary, SD cards. They were so small, they're so expensive. If you want something bigger, that's really the way to go. If you want to
and also, you spent a lot of money on that machine, and Sony did not care. They did not support it.
They did not support it, so might as well open it up to lots of other things.
Go nuts.
Which I guess maybe leads us more into some of the ethics when it comes to.
Well, I think before we get into ethics, let's talk about some of the cons, maybe, or some of the things that
Okay, let's talk about cons first. Then we'll get into ethics.
What would make you do that, or things? I know, Branden was talking about emulating PSP earlier, and one of the things I remember he was complaining about, because all he does is complain.
All I do is complain.
like a week ago when we were talking about this, is that like the audio kept cutting. It was just a little bit, wasn't great.
Yeah, it was like cutting and crackling.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all the time, but it was often enough that I'm like, how hard is it to just play this MIDI file? Like what is it? Why is it struggling to just play this simple audio in this game? And that's actually a problem that I've had with multiple emulators, different games. I don't know. And I across different computers, like it's a problem that has followed me basically since the beginning of my emulation. I always run into situations with audio in particular. And I am super sensitive to sound. Irritating sounds drive me, messes with me nuts. Too. I can't tune them out. I can't ignore it. It gets under my skin. If something is rattling in my car while I'm driving, I am going to find it and I'm going to stop it. And I don't care if I get in an accident searching around my car to find this rattle. I cannot deal with it. So you can imagine playing a game, it's bothering me quite a bit. And I'm sure that if I were to sit down with a bunch of tutorials and fine tune the software emulator, I think in this case, it was the PPSSPP. I don't know how you're supposed to say that.
It's like you're calling a cat.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm sure that there's probably a way to fine tune it to my machine so that it is close to perfect. I ain't the guy that's going to do that though. And I think most people are not going to do that. So if you run into issues like that, you might be put off from the whole idea of emulating. Like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to get a computer science degree to play this silly game. Right.
Are some of them even fixable though?
No, like that's the problem. Like with software emulation, because it's not always 100% compatibility. There's a lot of games that implement different types of, like, it uses the hardware differently for sound, for everything else. So like if you played a game that specifically had a way of, like, I guess, translating its sound into the game that wasn't 100% compatible with that software emulator yet, then you'd get like a lot of little issues from that. And so like any games that kind of had the similar development style of how it was used, like, since that feature wasn't fully implemented, it's going to either cut out or have like glitches and things like that. So like that's also like a negative aspect of like emulation, software emulation especially, is you run into a lot of cases where
these constraints.
Yeah, there's constraints. Like that's why, like, if you're really into like software, like if you really want to go out there and emulate and figure out like, hey, I want to play this one specific game, is it going to play well? A lot of these like websites for the owners of like these emulators. So like, let's, if you're using like PPS, whatever it is,
that one.
Yeah, that one. I forget how many S's, how many P's are in those, but whatever. It's like that one. They will have a list of like a compatibility list usually, and they'll tell you like, all right, this game is at like 80%, or it either plays like perfectly or it plays good or something like that. So it gives you kind of an indicator to like, where on the spectrum is this going to play for you and whether you're okay with that. And sometimes they'll give you like little like tidbits of like, oh, this thing doesn't work, or this is like a little glitchy here and there. And so like, then you can make a decision yourself. Like, do I really want to play this game in the context of like these little glitches here and there? And so it becomes a personal preference of what can you handle at that point.
Yeah. That sounds like a nice option or
exactly
overview to give you. Know what you get into.
Exactly.
Yeah, I sorry, I thought of a way that you can remember the number of number of P's and S's. It's the opposite of Mississippi. Mississippi has 4 S's and 2 P's. This has 4 P's and 2 S's. There you go.
Oh my God.
Honestly, that's not going to be like instant. I remember.
I will still have to think. I'll have to visualize Mississippi and this thing now.
Yeah, I know.
No, but it does. The concept sounds right. Like in my head, it makes it sound. But me trying to translate it into like me telling somebody, it probably
saying out loud. No,
I would still fail at saying it out loud. Probably.
No, the non-joke answer is it's just doubling each letter. PPSSPP.
It's just your PPSSPP. PPSSPP. Okay,
but anyway,
I have to practice it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are issues with poor emulation or, games that just haven't been, or emulators that haven't been updated to account for specific games. this might be a whiny one, but I know, like, I really like using original controller hardware to play games. And that's becoming less of an issue. Yeah. It's becoming less of an issue in the modern era, right? Like I have a DualShock or a DualSense that I use as my PC controller, and I can play most games with that. But, if I want to play a Super Nintendo game, I can buy an 8-bit DOE controller that looks exactly like a Super Nintendo controller. So it's not as big of a deal now, but I know in the past I used to hate playing with like a keyboard to play a Super Nintendo game. Like your experience, Emily, with Chrono Trigger, I can see, like, that would have driven me nuts too. I would 100%. I would have been inclined to give up as well, because it's like, this is not the ideal way to play this game. So that's, I don't know. That's less of an issue nowadays. But it has traditionally been an issue that I've had with emulation.
The first time I ever played Terranigma was with a keyboard, which is not easy because it's an action, RPG.
It's not super twitchy, but it is. You have to be dexterous.
Yeah.
Or you're just used to a lot of the computer games. I don't know if you played a lot of Flash games back in the day.
I did.
Nibble with that.
I had like claws at this point. I got so good at it. I was just like, this is just like a lot. The nice thing about it is like I have I have my assortment of 8-bit DO controllers at this point. I have like NES ones, SNES ones, Sega Genesis ones, and stuff like that. Saturn, all sorts of different versions of things like that. So I think nowadays it's a lot easier to have your options, but back in the day you did not. You had keyboard.
And you can also literally
well-priced.
You can buy a Nintendo or Super Nintendo or N64 controller from Nintendo that has a USB.
That's no longer
ostensibly it's for the
under
Switch,
the membership,
but
right?
Is that required? Yeah,
it used to be
required that you
membership requirement. I think they lifted it recently.
I don't remember. Yeah, maybe they have.
And I don't know if they're still for sale. They may have only been on sale for a limited time. But like I have all those waves, so that I can, if I want, I could plug that. I'm sure I could plug that USB Super Nintendo controller right into my computer, and it would be totally fine. So,
yeah, exactly. But cons wise, like I'm trying to think of like if there's anything else.
We talked about lags, and so the major two lags a lot of these games have are input lags or visual lags. And so some games that we've noticed or are kind of notorious in this JRPG space for the input lags is like Shadow Hearts, right?
Legend of Dragoon, Shadow Hearts,
and Legend of Dragoon.
Anything with a timed button Mario RPG, I'm guessing would fall under that category as well. You have to deal with timed button presses on a software emulator. It's going to be probably more challenging than it should be.
Yeah, like you're definitely going to have to get used to that lag, which you could probably do over time, but it would just be a little bit difficult to kind of get grasp around
with a software emulator. Is the lag always going to be the same though? That's one thing I wonder. Is
like
you can adjust to if it's like 50 milliseconds later than you think it should be. You can kind of adjust to that if it's consistent, but like if it's inconsistent, then I feel like it would just be a hard thing to have to deal with.
Yeah, like it can possibly be inconsistent depending on what your computer and all these different things. Also, like if you're switching up displays with what you're doing, so it could add or subtract lag depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, because because like you said, you get the lag coming at you from two different directions.
Yeah, exactly. So like, and between both directions, the lag just might be egregious. Like in terms of like. Like there's sometimes like if you're playing, like you're not going to sit there and you want to play like, a fighter and have like an incredible amount of input lag because you're just never going to be able to have your like combos. They're never going to sit. They're not going to actually like work at all.
How can I get good? The system won't let me get good.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like, I know from like an RPG standpoint, like for most, if you're playing turn-based RPGs or even like low stake action RPGs that are not as twitchy, you can get by with like a little bit of like the lag,
especially
itself.
If they're for the story.
Yeah. It's the second you start getting like how we talked about like those input scenarios like Legend of Dragoon, or if you're playing like a very twitchy, like if you're trying to fight a boss in like Ys on like the SNES or something like or the other, like you're gonna have a hard time getting the timings right or figuring things out and stuff like that. So there's like
and
that
just a lesser
aspect.
Experience too.
Yeah.
I feel like it's less satisfying when there's that lag.
I hate lag. Like for me, like the second I start to feel like any sort of like, there's like a minimum amount of lag that my brain will allow for.
Tolerance. Yeah,
exactly. Like my tolerance for lag is very like limited. And so like, that's why I lean always like hardware emulation is just like, I do like software emulation is if I'm playing like a specific context. And I think we'll talk about it in like our next section when we talk about like interesting positives to like emulation in general that we didn't talk about yet, but like there's some really cool things that you can do with it in the right context.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another con, and we've already kind of mentioned this, but just to put to stick it here, the if you want to go the full hardware emulator route, the cost is significant, right? If you want to get an analog, which I personally consider analog to be kind of the top tier like luxury brand for hardware emulators.
Yeah.
They're putting out these beautiful devices that are very functional. Yeah. That's pricey and it's limited. It's pricey and you have to be willing to put your money down sometimes a year in advance for the device. So that's I would call that a pretty substantial con.
Yes, huge.
If barrier to entry is much higher.
Yeah. Like if you're on a budget, hardware emulation is hard to argue like for. Just because like it's a lot more expensive. It's slowly like there are options out there for anyone who's like interested into like let's say Mister. If you don't care about playing your physical games, like analog is perfect for hardware emulation if you want to play your physical games. If you don't care necessarily about playing your physical games and just maybe download copies of those games that you own or whatever you end up doing, there's like the Mr. FPGA, where like originally Mr. FPGA was like a $500-$600 thing, like boards that you'd have to like put together, and that was a very expensive proposition for most people. Recently, there's a guy on Twitter called Taki Udon who's made a lot more, I guess, affordable options.
The Mr. Pi. Right?
The Mr. Pi, yes, exactly. It's like I think around $200 to $300.
Something like that. Yeah. I pre-ordered one. Mine I think is shipping soon, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's made like I just pre-ordered a the PlayStation Superstation, or they call it Superstation basically, and it plays like physical PS1 discs and has like all the different cores that you'd want to play for an FPGA or for Mister basically. And so like there's a lot of options that are starting to come up as time progresses. So like I would just keep an eye on, I think Twitter, a lot of people go on there and they have a lot of people who are working on different like projects and stuff like that. You got to be weary of all the different projects and make sure that they're real. There's a lot of people out there that scammed. Exactly. There's a lot of scams that come up. There's some like recently that like, if they're asking to take your money before they even show a product, then that's a bad idea.
And look for a track record too. Look for people with a track record and companies with products that they can show you.
Exactly.
That's important as well.
Yeah. One thing that I would, you don't have to shell out money to emulate games. Like you guys have been talking about all the luxury options, but if you're not okay with handheld, there's so many like cheap AliExpress handhelds that play console games as well as handheld games. If you just want to dabble in it, I feel like that should be probably good enough.
Oh yeah. There's like the Ambernicks too that are like, I think they're a little more pricier, but there's like, emulation little things.
Yeah. Like the Miu Mini was popular for a while, that little compact guy. I was tempted to get one, but I already had the analog. So it's like, I don't need all of these devices.
100%.
The only issue with those is usually they come preloaded with games, but the SD cards they use aren't usually that great. Yeah. So oftentimes you want to buy just a better SD card and put your own games in there. And that also helps, I think, with choice paralysis because you're kind of curating what you want to put on that device rather than just scroll endlessly through all the options.
You definitely want to pick and choose what you want to put on there. Be more systematic.
I think that just makes it a better experience. Like we talked about choice paralysis earlier, and
that is a con.
You can just really feel it easily.
Yeah, and I find that as like a con to emulation in general is that like it's easier. Like for me, if I'm going to want to play a game, I'm going to grab it from my shelf, put it in, and that's the game I'm going to be playing for that period of time. Like if I'm scrolling through a list of games, it's so easy for me to like take forever to choose one, or play a game for like 15 minutes and be like, yeah, I'm going to move on to a different one. Like it's just, you become like a little bit ADHD about it, where you're just like, drifting, and you're never really truly finishing a game. So
yeah, that
becomes like a con in itself. It creates this like,
well, it depends what type of gamer do you want to be. Like,
it's just true.
It's okay not to finish your games. If you get enjoyment out of just playing a little bit and just experiencing for a little bit, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more difficult maybe in JRPGs, but
that's what I was going to say. It's much easier if you're like, I like to play NES platformers. You could definitely play for 15 minutes and then move on to the next game and just play that. But like for RPGs, you kind of
some of them you could probably finish in 15 minutes, right?
100%.
Like,
yeah.
Yep.
So like, there's a lot of options there. But yeah, like
and
RPGs.
We haven't gotten into other pros. Maybe we should get into for emulation of how you could take any game, right? And if you want to modify your experience, there's a lot of people on the internet who've probably thought the same thing and have provided that service for you.
Yeah.
A lot of, the PS1 games have been kind of upscaled and better experience. Like I think Final Fantasy IX is kind of the one that everyone talks about with their mod.
Oh, Magurumi.
Oh, yeah, they could use AI upscaling or whatever for the backgrounds, because those backgrounds do not look good.
Nope.
And blown up on modern hardware for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Square lost all its assets for that period of time. So
there's that too.
Does not help.
Yeah. And if you get into like some of the fandom scenes, like all the like Oblivion kind of games or Skyrim, and they have like, a lot of kind of fun mods to keep it fresh if you want to experience a game with a new coat of paint.
Exactly. And there's like, even for Oblivion, I think there's like something being worked on now that like people are trying to like create a new version of Oblivion, like a fan made version that's like a whole new like graphical engine and things like that. And like, you were talking about like making games feel new, is like software emulation is where it's at when you want to do it that way. And that's where like the other side of the coin is like, okay, we've been talking about hardware emulation being like key, like no lag, superior. All these things, superior, it's all these things. But there's like this idea of like software emulation lets you take a game and just like make it like almost a fresh coat of paint, of like, you can turn it into like a brand new game sometimes. Like I love the emulator DuckStation for that reason. 'Cause like, for instance, like if you want to play Metal Gear Solid, like you can play the Metal Gear Solid version that's on the PS5, like, where it's just basic like emulation that Sony like, or like Konami has used, or you can use like DuckStation that takes it, you can upscale it to 4K, and it has like these features that let you like, so basically PS1 used to have like warble likeness, where like depending on how you moved, the pixels would just warble around, and it would just be a little glitchy looking. Like that was just naturally how it is. But basically what that setting does in DuckStation is that like it smooths all of that out and makes it run like almost seamlessly, where it feels like a new game. And so there's like a lot of really cool features that you can add with these emulators.
Just ways to customize the experience. I know a lot of people like to do like clothing mods and things if you're into that. So there's those options. But also just like inserting, I think, a new spin. Like you could change, like the enemies to be, flowers or something. I don't know.
Flower enemies.
If we're talking about like modifying a game, that should still then be playable on hardware emulators as well. Because like if you have a ROM of a game that you've modified, you could play that on a hardware emulator. So like Dallah, I think what you're talking about is more the software of the emulator itself is like changing the output.
Yes.
So it's like doing things at a system level rather than like the game itself being modified. So like Metal Gear Solid looks smoother just because of the way DuckStation
can handle it,
runs it with those settings or whatever. Am I understanding that right?
Exactly. Like with hardware emulation, you can only go as far as what the hardware can do.
Yeah.
Like you can't push it to its limit. You can't push it to a new limit or change how it looks.
Yeah. It is what it is, and that's the ceiling that you
have. Like the most you can do is like resolution. Because like you can like it, they'll naturally upscale the resolution to like a certain degree.
Bump your resolution. Sure,
But like that's the extent of usually hardware emulation. It's where you have like software emulation. You can do a lot more. You can do internal resolution, so like it smooths out all the jaggies. It like does a lot of really fun stuff with like you can basically create your own remaster of a game without waiting for
it to happen.
And without having to modify the game either, right? Like you're not even doing anything to the game itself. You're just telling the software that is pretending to be the hardware, hey, you have all these capabilities that you didn't know you had. You can smooth out these textures. Like there was stuff like that even in the PlayStation 2. Yeah. To when you're running a PS1 game, they would let you smooth the textures more, and it's improved load times and things that
the PS3 did that too.
Just weren't part of the original PS1 hardware. So
yeah, it's incredible.
We'll see that maybe on the Switch too.
Yeah, and you get like a lot of people like creating their own HD remasters too. So you can like people have created like they've taken the assets of like the art and they changed it and they like upscaled it, or they created new like 4K versions or HD versions of those things, and then you can just kind of add them back into the game and you'll have like this. So there's a lot of like incredibly talented people out there that are just passionate about certain games, that are creating these like amazing like experiences for games that have kind of been forgotten maybe for the period of time, especially a lot of PS2 games.
Or they have a cult following.
Exactly. Like they're forgotten by the publishers and or developers.
Majority by the publishers.
Not by the people. The people still remember them. The publishers.
I don't think they're gonna.
Yeah, no. It's the point is like the people remember and they want it.
Yes.
But the publishers aren't giving them what they want, so they take it in their hands.
They do it themselves.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Another benefit is fan translation, right? Like we kind of have alluded to this a little bit.
I did a video on it.
Being able to, you did have a recent video on fan translations. And you can, find these fan-made edited scripts and patch them onto a ROM pretty easily and run them through emulators and be able to play them. And that's both software and hardware, right? Like if you have a ROM that you've patched with a translation, you can stick it in an analog, or you can play it on a, PPSSPP if you want.
Yeah. I've done that with like PS1 games.
Yeah. It's like really opens the door for a ton of games that you might be interested in that you just would never otherwise have a chance to play.
Yeah. It's incredible.
I'll never get bored.
I know. It just
as if there weren't enough games already.
Right?
The backlog is already rough.
Massive.
There's still Super Nintendo era Square Enix or Squaresoft games that I haven't played that I like. Treasure of the Rudrus, like that looks amazing. That was their swan song on the Super Nintendo, and I just have not played it yet. I'm pretty sure there's a translation patch. Should probably get on that, but there's just so many.
There's a PlayStation 1 game
released too.
Yes. There's a PlayStation 1 translation that happened recently called for a game called Linda Cubed.
Yes, I am familiar with Linda Cubed. Yeah,
that was one of the games I was gonna put in my video, but I decided to wait till I'll probably do it in my part 2 whenever I do that one.
Sure.
But it's a very like interesting, weird game because like you're basically like kind of has like that mentality of like Live Alive, where you're doing like different chapters almost. But it's all like almost like a Noah's Ark story.
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi Noah's Ark, right?
Yeah, it's like
I know a little bit about it.
So it's a very like eclectic, weird, like something that would like we would never have ever been able to play or see that here. And it's like awesome that there's passionate people out there that also translate games. Because that's not easy.
No,
certainly not.
We've talked about translation.
It's a largely thankless job too. You might pour years of your life part-time into translating a JRPG script, and a few dozen people will experience it, and it's like, but you gotta love. I mean, they obviously love what passionate. They do. They love doing it. So
it's amazing. And that's
you get the Cinderella story every now and then with Geofront, for example, getting basically hired by the companies to work on the games that they were doing just out of the goodness of their heart before, but that's not common.
Like I don't think I've heard of many companies doing that outside of maybe like Sega with like Sonic Mania as well, where like that team of developers where they would just make like modded or like their own versions of different kind of games. And they were just so good that like Sega was just like, come here.
I do wonder though, like if some of these, people have done that in the past, if they put that in their resume, if they apply to these companies, if they want that to be a known fact that they've done or worked on that, or keep it hush hush.
I
probably wouldn't, but there, like you were saying, Dallah, there's a couple of times where the company, if there's somebody smart, at the company who's paying attention to that stuff and seeing the quality of the work they're putting out, it's like, why would you, you have to pay this person if you hire them, but you want that on your team. You want that working for you. And that's what they did with Whitehead. What's his first name?
What is his
Timmy?
name?
Johnny? Okay, so but fan translation is great.
Yeah, awesome.
What else? So do we want to talk about ethics? I mean, I know that's kind of a touchy.
We kind of touched a little bit on it. Maybe we could talk about companies that have handled ethics.
We've talked about ethics before in a previous episode, and I think everybody knows kind of like the ethical moral ground around emulation and what there is out there. There's not much we can add to that conversation at this point.
No, I think there's a common stance, right?
Yeah, like
if you can't purchase the game.
Yeah,
emulation's kind of free game.
It's you do whatever you're comfortable with at the end of the day, and there's like the legal aspects around that. Whatever you want to take it from. You do whatever you feel is
you
right.
do whatever you want at your own risk. I think is the broadest
You'll
way we can put it.
Maybe shamed if you're pirating games that are still available for sale, like new games.
Right.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, do you care? At the end of the day,
you don't have to advertise
you
you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Just do whatever.
I wouldn't rub it in.
Yeah, I wouldn't advertise it, but at the same time, like just do whatever you're comfortable with at the end. But I think like what Emily was saying, maybe we spin this in a way more talking about how companies have dealt with it. And I think by companies I mean Nintendo, because they're the ones who seem to have like the biggest, just deep-suited hatred towards emulation.
Maybe before we get into Nintendo, there's a company that's done emulation pretty well. Maybe we should talk about the positives first.
Well, the positives, fine. I think that's good.
And then we'll say the negatives.
Yeah, that's true. I think Emily was talking about earlier is that Xbox. I think we can't leave them out.
Microsoft.
Sometimes we gotta throw them a bone.
I think in the JRPG space, we kind of overlook Microsoft and Xbox maybe a little bit too much, which. There's reason for that.
I think it's reasonable to overlook them. They brought that on themselves.
They did. I think they're trying to come back in the good graces with what they're doing with Atlas.
But they have done some good things, and that the things that they've done that are good are not washed away by their relative disinterest in my favorite genre. So,
and also lack of interest in physical media.
We'll see how we all feel after Claire Obscure 33 comes out, because remember that. That was
the nice Microsoft funding.
Exactly. They had funding from Microsoft. So Microsoft is doing some things right. They're not all the way evil all the time. A little bit more. Yeah, they drift in and out depending on their firing tactics.
The Xbox 360 was when they started doing more JRPGs. And there are certain games there that they've made backwards compatible, right, on systems through emulation.
Yeah.
Which is going back on topic.
So back on topic. Yeah. You have the Xbox, which their whole backwards compatible platform is emulation based. So playing, games as far back as the original Xbox on your Xbox Series console is all done because Xbox have had a very dedicated team that just focused on how to emulate these games. And to the point where like they work really well. Like, no one really notices any of the big differences or anything that goes to do with that. Not every game is compatible, unfortunately. And that's why it was always like, they were kind of like piecemealing, like every so often they'd be like, here's another 20 games that we've added to this list. Because, it's like we've talked about before, it's like, it takes time for them to make sure the games are compatible enough to release to say that this can work.
Yeah. Which is better than just, giving us half-assed games.
No, exactly.
Yeah, a company can't just be like,
I have so many resources.
Emulate at your own risk. They're not going to, because their brand image is tied to that. If I download a game on the PlayStation and it plays terribly, like that reflects on PlayStation. Right? It reflects on Sony. So so understandably they're protective of that. And Xbox was doing the same thing. They were, but at least they were doing it. At least they were making an effort to do it.
Unfortunately, platforms like Steam, though, they have a lot of games on there that are not always compatible with modern hardware. Like, I think my dad tried downloading Bully because he remembers my brother and I playing it, and he's like, "Oh, I want to play Bully." I'm like, "Do you?"
Yeah.
But he tried it, and it crashed. Like, it was awful. And he had a pretty, standard good gaming PC.
Yeah, the problem with like, there's the whole PC side of things where like,
there is.
It's very fickle in terms of like hardware, and like things change drastically like within the span of like 5 to 6 years. And so like a lot of games that were maybe working on Windows 10 don't work on Windows 11 as well, and like Windows like 8 and stuff like that. So like,
it's sad.
At least you have companies like GOG that constantly like are finding ways to, and even now they have their new like, I forgot what they call it. It's like their preservation like library, where like they're adding to that on a regular basis recently. That's like adding more like older PC games that previously did not work.
Yeah, what is that called? It start with an F.
Yeah, it's like they just like recently dropped it, like probably within the last few months.
Foundation.
Yeah, and then they let people vote for games they wanted on there.
Exactly,
right?
And the one game I want is not getting enough votes. So if everyone wants to go out there and vote for the best game voiced by Ice Cube ever. It is called Sanity, Aiken's Artifact.
Yes.
It's on my list of videos to do. I keep forgetting because my PC laptop is a potato right now, and I can't quite play it and grab proper footage. So I'm
just
stuck.
The preservation program.
Be much easier.
I know.
That's what they're. It's just the preservation, the good old games preservation program.
Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would be happy to vote for your weird Ice Cube game. I can't. Where do I do that?
You gotta, I think, search for it. I don't know if they're still taking votes. Are they?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, that was the thing a couple months ago.
I'll have to look out. I'll find a link to it.
Final Fantasy VII was on there.
Oh, the PC version?
We could start a revolution. We could get, if all of the JRPG Pursuit community members all banded together, started voting for whatever it's called. I can't.
Sanity. Aiken's
Artifact.
Sanity.
Yeah. Then we can really make a change.
Not a JRPG, by the way.
It's an isometric, like, kind of like Diablo.
Some people might be tricked into thinking it was, so that's okay.
There's
some elements, no?
There's like RPG elements to it. It's like an isometric RPG-ish.
It's RPG adjacent.
Yeah.
At least, right?
You have an HP and an like a sort of MP like gauge, and then like you have skills that you learn and use, and then you have Ice Cube and his glorious, like really badly like recorded. Like you can hear the echo. You can hear the echo of the recording around him. It's just like poorly recorded. It was a well.
Well, maybe it's supposed to speak to the name. No,
that's true.
Right. You feel like you're losing your mind as you play.
It's true. You do.
It's very immersive.
I will keep talking about this game until I play it and realize that I regret telling everybody about it because it's garbage. So one day when I realize that I regret all of this, I'll let you know.
Okay. Perfect.
Until then, vote for it, guys. No.
Do it.
But yeah, PC
yes.
obviously has issues. We have piecemeals of the other two companies, right? Also doing a little bit of soft or emulation with the Switch Online as well as the PlayStation Network. Those are a bit of a mixed bag, though, right?
Yeah, like the N64
in terms of quantity, maybe some quality.
Yeah, because like some of the N64 quality, like some of the it's a bit rough, and N64 is hard to emulate. In general.
Yeah, you can technically play Ocarina of Time on the Switch Online, but it doesn't look great.
It's not a good experience. And then the same with like the PlayStation. Version. Yeah. The PlayStation, they have their like, games like, they just added Armored Core and they added a bunch of other games to their thing. And like their emulator is fine. It's not perfect.
It just could be better.
Mid.
Yeah. It's like they took like the most basic like of emulators and just like implemented it with like zero features. And even like resolution changes, like they didn't like add anything that makes it like would make it pop on a PS5, let's say. So like that's the one thing I'm just like, I wish they would have put a little bit more effort into these. I wish they loved like that's the one thing I give like Xbox like props for is that like you get these backwards compatible games that like let's say even like Final Fantasy 13 games, like on an Xbox Series, you can play those games in 4K.
That's the best way to play the Final Fantasy 13
100%.
games.
Yeah, like
it's crazy.
there's so many games that they like, not only did they make it backwards compatible, but they were just like, hey, like, let's up the resolution. Let's also add like better assets, like for the Xbox games originally. And they just like create like even better versions of those games, which they really, you could tell. Yeah. Like they have a lot of love for that art. And so like, I feel like when it's like Nintendo and Sony, they kind of just, it's like here, just take this and stop talking to us. Like it's
take our crumbs.
Yeah, like, they don't put any, like, they have no, there's no heart to it, which is a little sad because Sony's backlog is so good, and it would be great if they just cared a bit more about how they honored those games.
The thing though with Nintendo though, which we alluded to before, is even though they give us some crumbs, they really try to, bolster down like why you shouldn't be trying to pirate or emulate these games on your own.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with them being like, you shouldn't pirate our games. 100%. You have the right to be like, don't steal from us, please. But when you go after, they're going after the sites that are, these games are not for sale. Like they're not making any money off of these games. And
I don't see them bringing them back anytime soon.
Yeah, they're not. Most of
it's just like it's way overdoing it. It's going full like Wrath of God on a situation.
They want these games to be forgotten.
Yeah, and they're going after
what they're asking,
and they're going after like emulators, which like emulation, like, emulators themselves is legal. Like nothing about an emulator is illegal unless it's using like specific proprietary, like that was our loophole for the Switch emulator, is that it was like using specific like code that was very much proprietary to like Nintendo, and that's like that was how they got rid of that. But like there's like the 3DS one, like that's a dead system. Like they don't sell that anymore. They've shut it down.
That
like,
eShop.
Yeah, like they should not be shutting down like a 3DS emulator like at all. Like that's just
I don't fully understand that situation, why the emulator itself was shut down. That doesn't track with my understanding of how this whole thing works. Even.
My guess is that the department that handles that security or whatever are just have a lot more resources and funding compared to those that maybe in the back room they're thinking of maybe bringing back the 3DS games or something, but they just don't get greenlighted as much as the hardcore, hammer of justice.
Yeah. My assumption is also that Nintendo doesn't really care if it's technically correct for them to go after.
Oh, they don't.
Something like the Citra emulator or whatever. It's more, you are just a couple of people that are running this. You're not Nintendo, and
they're flexing their power.
Yeah, we'll just scare you. Like we just have
they
to
have
like
money.
Basically, if it
lawyers.
goes to trial, you'll still lose because we have money to be able to get the best lawyers to convince a jury that's like, I don't know.
And you'll just waste money attempting to stay afloat.
Yeah, right. Like these are like normal people that live normal lives that don't have Nintendo money to like hire a team of lawyers to fight on their behalf. Like Nintendo's sitting there with that Switch pile of gold, and they're flexing it with these kind of scenarios. It's like they can do that, and I mean it's not great, but they can do that.
Yeah.
Like I don't like how people like to use the term preservation as a substitute for pirating, or as a way to justify pirating, particularly new games.
Sure.
I feel like there's a little bit of a cop-out. But when you get into more of the retro stuff, that's where I think, that's where the gray line makes more sense.
I think
why, emulation is just so powerful, and it's a way to experience these games that, again, you can't really anywhere else.
Yeah. Like, I think there's like some cases that were like, I would say preserving new games, not for like, to distribute is necessary, because there's a lot of new games. Let's say, do you guys remember on the PS3, there was a Turtles in Time, like HD-ified version.
The
arcade version that they made. It wasn't very good, but like it was taken down shortly after that came out. Like it wasn't around, like even within the life cycle of the PS3, it was already taken down. And then there's no way to get that. And so like if people wait until like it becomes retro, then games are lost to history at this point. So like preserving games as they come.
Game too that got lost.
And so like that's preservation is very important for these things because like I hate the idea of lost media because like there's so many things that I think about on a day-to-day basis sometimes that I'm just like, man, I remember this like little thing from when I was like a kid. And I'm like, I wonder if this exists somewhere on archive.org or something. And then you find it, you're like, thank God someone else out there had the same thought process to save or record this. And then you do it. So like, it's just good to have people in this.
It's good. Like they just preserved Xenosaga Pied Piper. People thought that was lost to time, and that's just been released. So that's great. I think it's excellent. Somebody's got to do it. I think the way to do it that's not pirating is if you want to preserve a game yourself, you can
100%
buy that game and rip that ROM off of there and put it somewhere safe. I don't know what where you'd put it, but put it somewhere safe.
Storage, hard external ones kind of fail sometimes.
Hard drives can fail.
They can.
The cloud could
save
go down.
It in multiple places.
I think the point is it's
multiple
hard,
places,
right? There's it's a real challenge, and there are organizations now that are focused on that. The Game History Foundation is one.
And they're still, I think, fighting, even though they got shot down with some of their campaigns.
Yep.
Yeah.
They were shot down recently, I think, too. Yeah.
Were they? What happened there?
Well, I think they were trying to get access. Like, what were they doing? I forgot.
They were trying to make it so that video games were recognized as something that can be preserved, like with a trademark. Because, like, fiction or like books and things, there's that 100-year trademark.
Yeah.
We want video games to have something similar practice, but they were shut down.
Yeah, I do remember reading about that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, lot to chew on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think hopefully this was a good scope for everyone about our thoughts on emulation, all the cool things you could do out there, and some things to think about when it comes to how you want to navigate the scene.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I guess before we sign off today, we wanted to talk about some recent pickups.
Ooh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And what we've been up to lately on a more personal note.
Personal. Yes. Whoa, guys.
Oh, well, hang on.
Personal gaming here, guys.
I don't know.
You don't know me.
You don't know my life.
But I think we all have maybe the same game to share that we should maybe go through first.
Yeah. We can go with
this lovely release here, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition for the Switch.
Yep.
You guys, this just released, and looks like we all got our copy in hand.
Yep.
And we're really excited for, I think we mentioned at the start of the show, that we'll be doing a members-only multiplayer kind of event.
Yeah,
jealous of you people that actually got your pre-order bonus. Best Buy always screws me. I always pre-order, and I almost never get the pre-order bonus.
You should pre-order at my Best Buy.
Day or what time do you pre-order? Like, when do you pick it up?
I don't pick it up. I do ship.
That's your issue. Do in-store pickup.
Always pick up.
Oh, really?
Always pick up.
Always pick up for pre-orders, please.
Yeah.
I've seen people online saying that they had a similar problem, though, where they went to pick up and they're like,
well,
we're
out.
out.
That's gaslighting, but yes.
I've more so, every time I do in-store pickup for with pre-order bonuses, I do tend to get them.
You do get it?
Yeah.
I guess I
had no issue,
but
I go there at 10 when they open. And then I see like the big bin of all the pre-order bonuses, and so they just grabbed one. I think I was for Xenoblade Chronicles X when I went in there. There were just people in line for Pokemon cards. So I think I was the only one in there for the game that I saw, at least.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe my areas, they're not into JRPGs, but
I mean, I'm not like I'm bummed that I didn't get it. I'm like I'm not that upset. I don't love that picture. It's just the cover, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's just the cover.
I have the same cover.
It's just nice to have, merch, because we didn't get a collector's edition for the Switch version. Yeah. And we're probably not going to get other cool merch for this.
Yeah.
I've got the little standy thing that came with the original collector's edition on the Wii U. Like that's
okay. Is that similar then? I don't know.
No, it's a different picture, but at least it's like a piece of art that I can have.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That'll do you well. And how you guys been liking? Have you been jumping into the game?
Yeah, I'm reminded of how much I love that game.
It's a lot of fun.
I am feeling some of its age a little bit.
A little bit.
In terms of the control, feels a little like laggy, a little sluggish at times.
I've noticed for the menus, it's like that. Less when you're in combat, but
no, combat is actually
better than I remember it.
Very smooth. I do like that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like jumping. For some reason, it feels like when you
it's
jump,
awkward with the trigger.
there's like
button.
a full beat after you hit the jump button before your character actually jumps. And I know that's just the way the original game was. I just not. I probably had rose tinted glasses and did not remember that, but that is kind of irritating.
Yeah. As someone, this is my first time experiencing the game. It does seem a little bit dated compared to, of course, the other Xenoblade games that have released on the Switch.
It's technically the second Xenoblade game, so it's between 1 and 2, really. So it's
I was trying to make comparisons, and it does seem like it is kind of in the middle there when it comes to a lot of the functionality and all the exploration stuff. I haven't gone too far into it. I'm excited to get more into it this week. But, it's pretty impressive, just the world. Like, it's a Xenoblade game. I think you can't go wrong with a Xenoblade game.
Are you enjoying the soundtrack?
Monolith.
It's weird, but I like it.
Sure.
It's so different.
Sure. I feel like the soundtrack, I feel like it's bipolar in my perspective of like, there's some things I'm like jamming onto, and then all of a sudden something like starts playing, and I'm just like, I don't know about this one.
Even the ones that I'm like rolling,
early 2000s
roll my eyes at the songs,
which is
but
nostalgic for me.
They're really catchy.
They are.
Like also it's like
the cheesiest.
They know. So this is the thing that bugs me about, and this is broadly about Japanese video game composers in the modern era. They know how cringy it is for the song to be literally about what's happening on the screen. They understand how cringy it is. That's why they write them in English, because they don't want their main audience to hear it and be cringing the whole time. But we're sitting here having to cringe like I'm on another planet. It's like, shut up, guy.
Well, a lot of Asian artists, like, they like to insert English because it's cool to know English. So there's that factor too.
That's true. Yeah, that's true in Asian pop music for sure. But Shoji Meguro literally said that's why he does the songs in English, so that it won't be distracting to the Japanese players. It's like, bro.
Yeah.
Don't love that.
It's a soundtrack. It has some really good good pieces.
It does have some really good songs, and that's what I'm saying. Is even the ones that I'm like cringing at and rolling my eyes at, like I love the Skell song. I love the Skell song. It's got the dorkiest
100%.
lyrics I've ever heard. The dorkiest, and that's coming from me.
Yeah, the biggest.
I'm saying that it's the dorkiest. Yeah, it's so dorky.
You're the
there's
number
an
one
option
dork on this podcast.
It's true. He is.
There's a what?
You're the number one dork.
Our dork. You're number one dork
I'm the
on
resident
podcast.
dork.
Yeah.
And there's an option in the remaster to do an arranged version of the song without lyrics. And I'm like, thank you.
I need to turn that on probably.
I like the cheese. So I'm keeping the cheese for now. If I get tired of it, I'll turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced the game already. So I have definitely had a full serving of cheese. So I'm looking forward to finally getting a Skell. It takes a long time to get a Skell.
It does take a while.
I'm surprised that's the case, but I guess it's to make it so like you're recruit and you're trying to, level up. And
you do. Yeah. They make you go through the full progression of the game. It's
a long game. I was surprised, but I guess I shouldn't have been surprised because the other Xenoblade games are long.
I know. Because it's not like you don't level up quickly usually. No. So it takes a while for you to even get to the point where you want to branch out far enough. And by then, by the time you get to that point, I've gotten 30 hours into it.
And even your gear is tied to levels. So everything
is. They give you so much gear in the beginning.
I know you get a lot of random
stuff. Still very much in the beginning, but I was like,
you get as you get more arms manufacturers being founded, there's so much.
I know.
I think there's two arms manufacturers when the game starts, and then by the time you're done, there's a lot of there's a lot of gear.
It's a great game though. I'm having so much fun with it. I am balancing that with a lot of other games. So there's too many games coming out, and then we have some games coming out in April. That's going to mess up my schedule of beating games. I'm going to beat I'm going to beat no games, but play all of them.
Play all the games.
Yeah.
I also, for time pickups, I also got my copy of Castlevania, the Dominus. Oh, you got yours. The different cover.
Nice.
Cool.
I love this cover so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I went with
this is the Dawn of Sorrow.
Forget what her name is, but
yeah,
that's the one that I really meant to play and never got around to. Order of Ecclesia.
Okay.
Played Portrait of Ruin. I also like. I
was tempted to get that with the Konami Shop version, but then I'm like, I don't know when I'll play these. So
I also kind of don't know when I would get to them, but it was kind of fulfilling for me. What felt like a hole in my collection. It's like I should have the Castlevania games. I really should. I love them, and getting them here was cheaper than buying one
original
of
DS
those games on the actual DS.
Yeah,
so
I was more inclined to buy this one because it is the DS games and they're harder to like get your hands on those. So like I
might wait for when BGP gets their stock in.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But so that's why
that's probably going to be soon.
There's usually a little bit, like a week or two after they start rolling out.
Yeah. And I specifically got the Switch version because of the touchscreen aspect to it. Works really well for the DS version. So
it's nice to, have the same Nintendo family. You just move from the DS to the Switch too.
That too, yes. But I'm excited to play this at some point. I don't know. I'll get to it one of these days.
One of these days. Did you guys get the other collection of Castlevania games?
I have the advanced collection as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to see Konami doing a lot of these, like of their older games. I like to see some other companies do something similar.
But yes.
It is a lot of remakes and remasters we're getting though, and not new games. So
Konami especially is like, I think they're focusing
in for that.
Yeah. I think they're trying to get like a feel of things, I think, again, because they were so lost for so long.
They want to revive. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like now it's just like, let's see, let's feel out the scenario.
I feel like they should know though what the popular IPs are.
Well, they know, but they don't know how much like they're like, does everyone still hate us? Will they buy these games?
I was going to say, is it still popular? That's the question they need to answer.
Do they have faith in us?
Yeah, exactly.
If we spend a lot of money.
100%. I think it's like
Silent. I think Bloober Team sold the idea of Silent Hill working to Konami, so they're more fully invested in that, which I'm very here for.
Yes.
F looks very, very good.
I'm excited for that. Did you hear that it was actually it's banned in Australia
already?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently it's
I mean, I'm not surprised, but it's kind of surprising to hear that it's already.
Yeah. Apparently it's like it has like a rating on there that like means it has to it's not going to come out in Australia at all. So the poor Australians out there will have to.
Australians are like a hardy people. I feel like they could handle it.
Apparently, they have a very rigorous.
They have to import the PEGI stuff all the time.
Yeah,
because a lot of their games don't even go out there. I think was it the latest Trails games? They didn't get PS5 versions or anything.
Yeah, really? And they're very harsh. Like they don't allow like a lot of like
distribution's not great.
Mature.
It sounds like.
Yeah,
I don't think it's even that. I think their distribution has just been declining.
That's true. Any other pickups that you guys have? Or should I show off a few more things?
You should show off. Show off.
Yeah, show off. I think I'm out.
Okay. I got my copy of Atelier Yumiya.
Yumiya.
So I'm excited to jump into this one of these days.
I was very pleasantly surprised.
Ryza first, or do you think you want to play that one?
I think I'm going to jump into this one and then go back to Ryza. Yeah,
I recommend it. Yeah, just get in because it's such an easy game to get into. Yeah.
And after watching doing the demo together last time in our after show, I just kind of got a little hyped of this looks like a fun world to just explore and have fun with. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun playing this on the PS Portal. So that's kind of solidified my,
especially for me, that like I said, that was my go-to way of just doing the random events and things around the map. It's very chill, relaxing way to go about. So I really recommend it. Exactly. Very pleasantly surprised. I knew there was something to the series because it's been going on for so long. But it's very good.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it. I'll probably, as soon as I get done with some other games that I'm trying to finish up, So
you got to start your year at the Atelier.
The year of Atelier. I'm going to start this up probably I'll probably at this rate because I want to play Clair Obscure when that comes out day one. So
thankfully that's only 25 hours.
Exactly. So I think I'm just going to finish that one quickly and then jump into this at that point because I think is a little bit of a dry spell shortly after, but then we don't know because what happens with Nintendo and whenever the Switch 2 might drop in May. Who knows? There's rumors of that happening. So I mean, either way,
will there be games we want? I don't know.
100% there's going to be games that I want.
Okay.
I
guarantee you,
yes, there will be one game.
There's going to be one game that I'm going to be like, I'm going to play this, even if it's
there's never been a Nintendo launch. Maybe the GameCube. But other than the GameCube, I don't think there's ever been a Nintendo launch where I'm like, there's no games that I want. It's always at least one game that I'm like, oh my God.
And
it's usually a Mario or a Zelda.
Metroid 4 is going to be the first day. It's going to be a day one. Like, they're going to drop that with the system. They've been kind of like holding that one off. And
I
so
thought that they had to restart development on that, and that's why it hasn't come out.
I think there's multiple factors.
They did. They restarted, but then like towards the end of last year, they had the trailer and they had like a whole thing for it saying like, hey, it's going to be in 2025, like the beginning era of like like within Q1 or Q2 of 2025. And so like, we haven't heard anything about it. So I have a feeling that they're just like, all right, this is going to be
for that.
This is a system seller. Like, people love Metroid and Metroid Prime in general. So like, it's a no-brainer.
It's a system seller. I think it has.
Well, Mario Kart 9 will be the system seller.
Yeah. It's a loyal fan base, but it's
not like
that
widely
many compared to Mario.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they're probably going to announce a new Mario game. Like, it's the 3D. There hasn't been a new 3D Mario game.
It's been so long, since
7 years, maybe.
Yeah, they had to have been working on something for a while.
But
there's Bowser's Fury, but I feel like Bowser's Fury was like the testing ground demo for for the new like what they're going to do.
Exactly.
So I said if you count.
Yeah,
but yes.
So I think like that was them testing the waters, and like it was very popular. So like I think whatever that is going to be whatever comes out with like the new system and stuff like that. So, and you never know, Monolith Soft has been working in the background with a lot of different things. So you don't know, like something might drop.
Are we going to do a live reaction?
Oh, 100%.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay. I'll have to wake up early because it's 6
early.
a.m. my time.
Say, it's like, it's pretty
I'll do
early.
it.
Let's do it. So check us out that day. I think April 2nd or
April 2nd.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be live then, but
6 a.m. Pacific. We might be a little bit earlier.
The Messenger.
I picked this up too. The Messenger. It comes with like the DLC. It's like they recently re-released this game and
the retail version.
The retail version. And so this is like one of my favorite platformers in recent years, I think. Like, just so good. If no one has played this before, go ahead and play it. It's Ninja Gaiden, but like you get to switch between 8-bit, 16-bit on the fly within the game. And the music.
For the creators
I have played it. It's
of
very,
Sea of
very
Stars too, for our JRPG players out there.
Yes. So Sea of Stars.
But it's not a JRPG.
Yes. This is straight up like a platformer, ninja platformer. Its music is so good. Like, the soundtrack for this game is incredible. But yeah, I wanted it physically. And I got it. Yeah.
You got it.
And
for a reasonable price, because it was going for a lot. The special
it had gone up,
game. Oh.
And I got my little.
Your first Trails figure.
My first real. I'm a Trails figure person now.
Nice.
This is going to spiral me into a horrifying place.
It's not horrifying. What do you mean?
Well, it's going to be horrifying to my bank account when I spend all this money on getting all the different.
Once, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, because like they're all out of print, so the ones I would have to find.
I was going to say you got to catch up, and I don't know if they're going to get cheaper.
They're not
get cheaper over time.
I don't think so. If anything, they're going to get more expensive, and I'm gonna hate that.
Maybe figures are interesting. Like, some of them get expensive on the aftermarket, some of them dip, but
Trails though.
There are all these factors.
Trails though.
It depends if the Japanese fan base kind of falls out of love with Trails. Maybe after it ends, they'll sell their figures for cheap.
If it ends poorly, maybe people will be so mad that they'll just like.
Depends.
But I don't want it to end poorly.
They'll flood the market with all of their figures that they don't want anymore.
Maybe it'll be great for us.
Get them all used.
Yeah, maybe it's great for us, but
is chosen as the best girl. They'll hate it.
Emily's throwing that out there. She's got to throw some Elaine love.
Of course.
No, we love Elaine on this podcast.
You should.
Branden is an Elaine stan now.
We have some Elaine. I wouldn't call myself a stan, but we have some Elaine positivity for sure.
Yeah. I've got some positivity for her. But yeah,
exciting when Kai comes out. We'll see more.
I'm excited. I still am almost done with that game. Gonna finish it one day. I am knee deep in both playing like half and half Xenoblade Chronicles and that game. So gonna get there one day. But that's about all. You guys playing anything else other than Xenoblade or anything fun?
Focusing on Xeno right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Xeno for me, and then I have a bunch of videos in queue I need to release because I have time to make videos now.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. I'm behind.
I'm not getting all stressed out. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, guys, I'm behind on videos. So if you watch out there, I've been waiting for the last episode of Dallah Games. It's in the works. I was tied up for a while, so it'll come out.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
It's been a blast.
For tuning in, as usual. We appreciate you. Once again, just want to throw out there, if you are interested in becoming a member, joining the Discord. It's a fantastic Discord, and we'd love to have you there.
And listen to our after show.
There's also the after show. If you subscribe at the Pursuer level, you can watch the after show. We're going to do that here shortly. It will be fun. And I guess that's it, right?
Yeah,
that's it for this week. And we'll have another exciting topic for next week and our live reaction of Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
Is that the same day, actually, the next episode and the reaction drop on the same day?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
All right.
Get a double dose.
Busy.
You get a double dose
and
of
we've got Midwest Gaming Classic like 2 days after that, so it's going to be
it's a busy.
I have a 5 a.m. flight.
It's going to be a busy week.
It's a busy week for us that week. So if you're at Midwest Gaming Classic, find us. We'll be walking around.
Come say hi. Yeah, don't shoot us. I don't know where you're going there.
Yes, please. Let's not.
Midwest Gaming Classic. Shoot us.
I was gonna say shoot us like a comment or something, letting us know that you're gonna be there.
Okay, that's less scary. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah,
but don't actually shoot us. Come
up and say hi though.
I'm a sensitive person for that.
Meet you. Yeah,
but yes,
come say hi.
Come say hi.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all I got.
All right, until next week, guys. Bye bye.
Take care.